feel like I'm very dark.
And now I'm going to start the stream.
Vacation.
Okay. It looks like the stream is happening. Oh, I gotta turn off mute. Okay. It is. We're on. Hi.
Are we on? Are we live?
We're live.
Hi. Hello, America.
Hello. Thank you for joining us, world.
Yes.
How are you, Leigh?
You know, I've been eating a lot of trail mix and occasionally crying in the bathtub, but overall, I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm okay. I have not learned any new skills, started any new shows, taken up any new hobbies.
We started a puzzle, and I downloaded my first game onto my phone. I've never had a game on my phone before.
What is it?
It's called My Little Terrarium, and you water plants, and you get animals to visit you and you feed them, and that's about the speed that I can handle. So, yeah.
I feel that on Twitch, this platform that is usually intended for gamers, that this is like going to be profoundly disappointing.
That was a terrible admission.
When I had to sign up for this, they asked me like, what are your interests? And so I've played like 3 games in my life, or 3 are Mass Effect, which is like a sci-fi game, and then there's Breath of the Wild, and then there's all the Marios, and that's it. That's all I got.
Marie Lou once made fun of me because I referred to it as Super Mario Kart, which is not a thing.
No. Is it not? Okay.
No, it's just Mario Kart. It's Super Mario Brothers.
When you play Mario Kart, which person are you?
I don't play Mario Kart, or I wouldn't have called it Super Mario Kart.
No.
I am what is known as a video game dullard. It's sad.
You know, it's not that sad. It's okay.
I have, however, made some foods, which I don't usually do. I made a Dutch apple loaf, and I tried to make a lemon tart, which ended in tragedy. So, yeah.
It feels like an outcome that I would expect for myself. I made sourdough bread like all white people in the quarantine. I will say, I was doing it before, as my Instagram followers know. So I'm a hipster and a quarantined white person.
Well done.
Thank you.
That's 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah.
2 white birds with 1 stone.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we should probably introduce ourselves for people who are just like happen on this Twitch.
Okay.
So I'll start. I'm Veronica Roth. I wrote the Divergent books. I also wrote this book, Chosen Ones, which is out today, and that's kind of why we're doing this live. I also had a plan, but you go next. Okay.
Hi. Your turn. I'm John Green. I wrote The Fault in Our Stars.
You look different than your author photo.
I know. I've been getting a lot of sun here in Los Angeles. Hi, I'm Leigh Bardugo, and I wrote Shadow and Bone and 6 of Crows and King of Scars and a bunch of other books in the Grishaverse world. And I also recently wrote Ninth House, which was my first novel for adults, which is a book about dark magic at Yale and murder. And yeah, happy to be here. And I've known Veronica, I've known you basically since before I got published.
Yeah, for a long time. Oh, yeah. I see that people can't hear you very well, so you might have to plug in.
I'm gonna move this forward.
Great.
Maybe that.
Hi. Okay. While you're figuring out your setup, I'll do my spiel.
Okay.
Which is that when I was going to go on book tour for this book, which we had to cancel for good reasons, I was going to go to some independent bookstores, and they were going to host me and be very generous with their time and energy. And we have partnered with some of them for this event. And they are Books Are Magic and Brookline Booksmith, Joseph Beth Cincinnati, and An Unlikely Story. And you can find links to their websites and all kinds of information like on a panel down there. And we encourage you to support independent bookstores because like all authors love them pretty much, I think, because they facilitate community around reading and connect books to readers and to authors and are generally forces for good in the book industry. So That's why they're important. Algorithms can only tell you so much about what you would like to read. A real person can tell you a lot more. So,
And I would encourage you guys also to look into bookshop.org, which is shipping now. You can order books through there, and we're adding those links to our website. And also, if you're looking for a way to support booksellers, BINC, B-I-N-C, the BINC Foundation, is a great way to support healthcare and support for booksellers in times of crisis, which this most definitely is.
yes. Excellent. Okay, we've done our thing. We're here to talk about book to film adaptations. I mean, at least that's where we're going to start. So I know that the Shadow and Bone's being adapted for Netflix for a TV show. Yes.
Yes.
Very exciting. And were you on set? Were they filming recently? Tell us more.
I was on set in February. Like, we basically finished production sort of right in time to get the show shot. So we're very fortunate because productions everywhere have had to be shut down. So right now we're in the process of editing the episodes. Can people hear me now? I don't know. I'll shout.
I think you moving closer helped, but it hasn't entirely resolved the issue.
Okay, I'm gonna just be sort of shouting like this.
Okay.
That's the way it's gonna be. Okay,
great.
So yes, I'll enunciate to the back row.
I know you can do it.
Yes, my nerdy theater kid is still in there. So yeah, we basically, we've finished, we're in post, but there's still a lot to do. People have been saying, when are you gonna drop the show? And the problem is that we can't until we've edited the episodes and added VFX to the episodes. And obviously all of our editors and the wonderful people at our VFX shop are working at a bit of a disadvantage right now. So yeah, that's sort of where we are in the process on that. You just announced film news.
I did, yeah. Chosen Ones, the rights sold to Picture Start, which is kind of a hybrid production company / studio that is like interested in books, particularly more than other places. But the real great part about it is that Eric Feig, who was a person who originally expressed interest in Divergent, and is probably like one of the main reasons that it ever got adapted. This is his company, so we're like reunited, which is very nice.
That's good.
Yeah, so much earlier stages than what you're at right now, but that is my news.
It's a long process. I think that I think it sometimes looks from the outside like it happens very quickly, because once you have the news, it's kind of, it moves forward. But we were very lucky. Our showrunner, Eric Heiserer, worked so hard to hire this incredible team of writers and worked so hard to push the show forward. Like, he was the engine that really was like, we are going to make this show, and we're going to make this show in this particular way. So we got very lucky that way.
Yeah. So set was in Budapest, is that right?
Set was in Budapest. We went twice.
Awesome.
I was so nervous for the first trip. The second trip was sort of more fun for me. And the first trip I did my cameo, which was thrilling but exhausting. Because
yeah.
I did not understand how much you have to stay on your feet. Although everybody was so great. They gave me a little, someday the show will be on Netflix, and I believe it's in episode 103. You will see this beautiful throne room, and I just want you to know that there's a little blonde author sitting in a niche, hidden from view on a little stool, because they gave me a little place to sit.
That's
while
so
everybody
nice.
else was doing anything. It was so nice. There's this huge staircase, and every single take they would send all of the Grisha going up and down the stairs, and they knew I couldn't do that, especially with the fancy shoes they had given me. But then later they let me wear my Crocs. That's great.
Wait, Crocs?
Oh, yeah. Crocs and socks. It's the way I roll.
I've heard they're very comfortable.
They are incredibly comfortable, and they're sort of the only shoes I can walk like a normal human in. So I am a big proponent if Crocs wants to sponsor my next tour.
Don't you think they could make a Croc look like an old-fashioned clog if they really wanted to?
I feel like they could goth up a Croc for me. Like, I feel like they could really, like, I feel that if, I did a lot of research on Crocs because I was like, perhaps there's a way to glamify my Crocs, but the truth is when you do that, you just get more like, closer to Crazy Lady from Florida. Like, no offense to Florida, lovely state, but like, I'm already eccentric lady in my neighborhood. I'm not sure I'm ready to level up.
Yeah, that seems like something you can wait to decide. We've got time.
But I am wearing pajamas in
They're
my
great pajamas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have questions.
You have questions. I have
Dude.
questions too.
Okay.
So, all right.
Well, we could go back and forth if you'd like.
All right.
I guess what I wanted to talk about, because I think this is what comes up when people talk about adaptations, is that, you know, authors will say like, well, it's a different medium, so it needs to change, right? From book to movie or TV show. But I think people assume that that's only about the length. So like, you know, a book is longer than a movie, so of course things need to be cut, and they don't understand why things will be replaced or added or changed, even if they don't affect, you know, the actual like runtime of the movie. And then for a TV show, I could see people hoping that every little thing will make it into the show, but that's not really the case. So I kind of just wanted to ask you how you feel about changes in general, or like what kind of changes make sense? Why do they make them? I don't know. Not just you.
Why do they make them? Why? I mean, I would be curious. Look, you and I have now both been through adaptation. I'm almost to the end of the adaptation process. You went through the entirety of one. You're about to begin another one. And I suspect one's feelings about this differ at every stage. And I think also it very much depends on the working relationships that you have with people in production. I think that people are keenly aware of how much can change in an adaptation, and it creates a lot of anxiety. And as a fan and a reader, I have felt this anxiety. And as an author, I have felt this anxiety. And it is very hard for me sometimes to let go of things. But I went into adaptation with some very key things in my head that I wanted to change in terms of casting. And some very key things that I wanted to make sure didn't change in terms of the core of the story. And I think that is, but identifying what those are is not always, it's not a science, it's an art. I will, sorry, go ahead.
No. They're saying they can't hear you again.
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry.
I don't know what to do.
I think.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna fix it.
I feel like you can tell I'm like starting to look at people in the chat. So I start to get distracted. But
all right. Let's see. Now do you hear me better?
Oh boy, wow, that's a lot better. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I said some really deep stuff, guys, so I'm sorry you missed it.
Yeah,
the wisdom was flowing very freely. But yeah, look, I think that adaptation, it provokes anxiety for these exact reasons, because it's never clear where the line for changes should be. And oh my God, it would be so easy if it was just a question of time, or of saying, oh, we're gonna combine these two characters, or we're gonna move this here, or we're just gonna line down. I just don't think it works that way.
No,
I think Ali Carter. Go ahead.
The best example that I could think of when I was thinking about this question was with Harry Potter movie 6. They added a scene where the Weasley's burrow gets attacked, and that doesn't happen in the book, and it seems like, why would they add that? But they said that the pacing of the movie was such that like no outside danger from Voldemort and his Death Eaters had happened in the entire movie. It was just like teen drama, basically. And they're like, we need to show you that there's stuff going on outside. And even though I wasn't always wild about that scene or that particular execution for it, you can understand why that would be necessary, just like to make it a whole story and a movie.
I think so. I think the problem arises when, look, I think it all begins with with your writers, with your directors, with your producers, and whether or not they respect the material. Okay, because we've all seen adaptations where it was clear that they didn't. I'm not going to name names, but like I have seen things that I loved adapted where I was shocked by the disrespect they had for the material. And I think what happens is sometimes people come into, when you go to meetings in Hollywood, they love you. They give you little bottles of water and they tell you how smart you are and how great you are. But once that deal is signed, in some ways the author can become the obstacle.
Yeah.
And I think particularly for women, and particularly for YA writers, and particularly for women of color, it becomes very easy and appealing to write them out of the equation and to treat them as the obstacle to something getting made, as opposed to the person who was the source of the material. So you have to be very careful who you work with.
You
And
do.
even
And
if you
sometimes
think that you're getting in bed with the right person, you don't know. Suddenly,
'cause
you
don't
you
know
wake
them.
up, there's a demon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that. I feel like it's been a while, so I'm getting like shadier over time when I talk about this.
I mean, I think that it's important also for people to understand that when we sign away our books, most authors in their contracts don't get to say, don't get approval over things like casting, don't get approval over things like scripts. I think there's maybe some people think that we have more power than we do. Certainly there are people who do. Like if you're J.K. Rowling, sure.
Yeah. Or E.L. James.
Like absolutely. But most of us don't have that. And also in most of our contracts, there's a little clause that says, if you talk smack about this production, we will come our descend upon you.
Yeah.
Like there are rules and diplomacies that surround these things. And I think also like we're all just trying to do, like with Shadow and Bone, I've definitely felt like we're all trying to do the best for the book. And for the books and for the adaptation. But I also get why people are freaked out about it, you know, and you went through this too. And I'm curious to know what was different for you in approaching the adaptation. I know you're just at the beginning, but in terms of like making the deal, because now you're older, you're wiser, you're a business lady.
Indeed.
Like what was different for you?
I think I was just really careful and not as like starry-eyed. So if people were complimentary to me, I was kind of like, whatever. Like I'm not interested in anything positive you have to say about my work, because I don't even want to like let that enter my consciousness. I want to know what your plan is, and I also wanted to know what they liked about the book, because if it's not the same thing that I like, then that's where the problem is. Because
Oh yeah.
you have to, I think, the best adaptations have an understanding of what's good about the source material, even if they don't adhere to it exactly, they know what it is. And I think that's kind of something that like we saw with the Divergent movies moving forward, is I think the first one, like Neil Berger knew what it was. And as they went, it's like they got farther and farther away from what was good about it. Like the books aren't perfect, but the strengths were not necessarily showing up in the movie in the same way that they did kind of in the first one, where it was a little more character driven, a little more heart driven, which I think is what was good about it.
That's interesting.
So for me, it was like, tell me what you like, tell me what you think, you know, might change. Like I'd like to know their ideas for what that could be up front. So I just knew what questions to ask, I guess. So it's always going to be a gamble, but I think I feel better prepared for it this time. And I was definitely more patient. I was like, wait for the right person. I mean, it doesn't seem like I was, because it already happened. But I did take some time.
I know. It's hard though. Like I definitely felt like there were times when we were out with Shadow and Bone and then with Six of Crows and I've talked about this before, I felt like the window was going to close. You know, like I felt like our chance was, look, you know, fandom is fickle, and you know, there's so many great books coming out and appearing on lists, and you know, things don't stay buzzy forever. And so there was always this feeling like, are we going to say no so many times that people are going to stop asking us to dance?
And you're kind of like, I would rather have some adaptation for my career, because it sets you up in a way that I don't know if people understand the degree to which even a bad adaptation like helps an author a great deal. And you know, like sometimes it feels like I would rather have this 2-hour-long book trailer than nothing. You're starting out, you know.
I mean, the scale of things is very different in Hollywood. What they can do with a tiny marketing budget in Hollywood is something vast in publishing. Like the the economies of it are just completely different. And I think as authors, we're all keenly aware of that. And I think, you know, most people, I think I've contributed to this, so I'm hesitant to call it out. But I think, you know, the advent of social media and the glamorizing of sort of what our lives look like sometimes gives a false impression of what kind of money authors make and also what kind of security we have in our lives.
Man, people, I love going on like Reddit and seeing like the disparity in what people think authors make. They either think authors are like mega wealthy or
Well,
that they're like living in their parents' basement.
and to be clear, like nobody gets into writing books because they want to make bank. Like, and if you do, you're stupid. Like, that is the worst. There's a terrible idea. Like, that's just a terrible idea. But like, but you know, what you do is you're doing this because it's your dream job and you're hyped to do the job and hopefully get paid for it. But what I think the thing, like the insecurity that most authors live with is, one, most of my friends are not able to write full time. They have part-time jobs. I think that's a reality people don't talk about all the time. A lot of my friends came out of school with debt that they're still paying off, like MFA programs and undergrad debt. And I think especially right now, that's super scary. Like there's an idea like that the first book deal is going to be the thing that makes you. Like, it's usually not. It's usually not the first deal, and it's not the first series, and it's not even the second series. Like, you have to kind of keep proving yourself again and again. But the reason I mention all this is not to be like, you don't know how hard we have it. Like, I got it good. I'm happy. But it's to say, I think there's a myth about the author life that does a disservice to people who are coming up and who think that their life is supposed to look a particular way for them to be taken seriously as an artist, that they should only be writing full time or they're not serious as an artist, that they should have sold their first book when they're 22 or they don't have the thing.
Yeah, like it's too late if you didn't. I feel like this is rich for me to talk about. I just want to acknowledge that my experience is like the exact thing that people hope for and dream of. And when I go talk to schools, I always start off with like, this is not an underdog story. Like, it's not. It was crazy, amazing, wonderful, and like incredible. And it is not common. But
it's not common. And I think too, I think that like that's magical, and I think that I get the appeal of that story, and it's a story media loves to tell, but there's always a backlash to that story. You know, if you become famous because, oh, look how young she was, look how young you are, look how young, eventually you stop being the youngest person in the room. You know, eventually you stop being the wunderkind. And I think it's, especially for women, it's something you have to be very careful of in the way that media gets to control your narrative. And it's something that comes up in Chosen Ones, in the way that people talk about Sloane, in the way that people talk about the idea of being a hero and being a woman. Like, it felt like some of your own experience might have worked its way in there. Perhaps I'm reading too much into it.
No, I mean, we can talk about it. The book opens with a celebrity profile of Sloane, and it is profoundly misogynistic and sexualizes her. And also this particularly cruel thing that it says, the guy says to her that her relationship with the Dark One, who's like the, you know, the bad guy, the Dark Lord figure in the book, is the most interesting thing about her. And it's like, I mean, that's a whole can of worms. But I did a lot of research for that profile because I think it's more mainstream than people think, that level of sexism. There was especially a profile of Margot Robbie, one of Scarlett Johansson, and one of Britney Spears that I remember pretty well from that process. But the part I didn't have to research is that there was a profile written of me a long time ago, and I never really talked about it publicly because I didn't want to complain about getting press coverage. Like, getting a profile in a major publication is an amazing achievement for an author. So, or an amazing, not achievement, but like a get, you know? So I never wanted to say anything bad about it. And I always felt like, well, I have to be grateful for everything, right? And I am grateful. But this guy, he spent days with me, talking to me. And when the profile came out, he described me And then he like barely quoted me. He quoted everyone talking about YA and talking about the phenomenon of my work, but never talked about me, how I thought about it, what I had told him, anything about like, anything that would have suggested that like I had worked for it was like gone. And it was upsetting, you know, and I'm not sure that this would be that obvious to someone watching or reading it now. Like if you went back and found it, there's a reason I'm not saying where it was. I don't know if this would be as obvious to other people, but like I knew everything I had said to him and how thoughtful I tried to be and how like much I shared with him and how vulnerable I was, and just none of it appeared. So it was so upsetting. And I was like drawing on that kind of delayed anger to write Sloane, because I didn't let myself be mad at the time, because I was like, well, you should feel lucky, you know?
Look, I think as authors, we're constantly walking this tightrope, right? That is of sort of abject humility and delusional arrogance, you know, like, and it's what's necessary to write a book. You know, you have to believe firmly and madly in your own voice and your own conviction in order to get yourself through a novel. Like it is such a march, it is such a slog, and you are assailed by doubt at so many points that you have to have this kind of bulletproof element to ego in order to say, yes, I have something worth saying, and I am going to push through the agony of these garbage drafts to get this thing said, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, you have to occupy this space of tremendous humility where you're willing to get guidance and editorial and go back and work that thing until you find a way to say the thing you want to say. And I think that applies to the way we conduct ourselves in public too. You know, we are at once expected to be accessible, but also to be aspirational. And we need to sort of live in this state of gratitude. But there's also a point where you feel like somebody has actually gone on the attack for you, and you're put in a position of not knowing whether you even have the right to respond. Yeah. I think we live publicly in a way that I, at least as an older person, have very little experience with. And I still, like, even especially with quarantine, I don't know how to be in this state, you know? I have it so much better than I have so many friends who are out of work right now. And so many friends who, you know, who are really looking down the barrel of not being able to pay rent, who are independent contractors who are not going to be able to afford health insurance. And so I'm not going to get out there and be like, I'm fine. You know, I'm doing great over here. Like, yeah. You know, like we joked about, like, I've been eating trail mix and crying in the bathtub, but it's also like, there's always this push and pull of like, how much sorrow are you entitled to? You know, how much pain are you entitled to, given the luck that one has had, you know?
Yeah.
It's all very tragic, Veronica. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
I know, it's so hard. I keeping it all in perspective. My feeling about quarantine in general is I let myself have feelings about it, you know, because we all do. We all feel this like ambient anxiety, just like we're breathing it in, right? But I also try and keep it in perspective. It's like you're healthy, you have a job, and your job is not being adversely affected by this, and yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I know this sounds corny, but doing a nice thing for someone always makes me feel better. Like, it's honestly the only thing that has soothed my anxiety at all. Even if it's inflicting my own recipes upon them and bringing them a treat.
Oh, that's nice. I should deliver people some bread, only they're all making it too. So no one wants extra bread right now. That's the only skill that I have. Okay, so we got some questions.
All right.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm just reading them for the first time right now. Sarah asked, what is it like as an author to put your story in someone else's hands, and how do you handle giving creative power to someone else? We kind of talked about this. But, how did you
personally,
a writer, when, you know,
I don't like it.
You don't like
I don't like doing it. Look, I could not be luckier. Eric Heiser is one of the most generous, lovely human beings ever, and welcomed me and brought me into the writer's room, and, you know, has talked to me and kept the doors of communication open. And even then, I'm like, no, it's mine. Like, look, I am a complete control freak. Like, it is incredibly difficult to not be able to take control. But I also reached a point in the adaptation process where I could no longer keep tabs on things. I couldn't watch dailies every day because I had a book to write. And I had to, you have a choice that you reach a point where you can either say, look, I'm now going to be committed to being a producer and being a screenwriter, or I'm going to be committed to being an author who occasionally steps in as producer. And for me, I have never wanted to work in film and TV. I want to continue to write books. And so, but that is terrifying, to step back and take your hands off the wheel.
That was what I would always tell people when, Divergent was in the process of being filmed, is like, I actually picked this job because I like this job and I like novels, and it's not that I would never write anything else, but that's where my focus is, especially now. And I think people think of those kinds of writing as almost interchangeable, but they're not. And people gravitate toward a particular form because they like that form. And so when movie stuff gets in the way of doing the thing that I actually wanted to do, like, I was like, all right, then, like, I'm out. I care, but I can't lose the thing that I really love and am passionate about.
Yeah. That fracturing of focus for me was really hard, and something I still haven't learned how to manage. Because the thing that makes me feel steady and stable is writing. Like, when I am not working, I don't really do very well. And so losing that and still having to make so many decisions and wanting to be involved, but also not, being the person who is the final decision maker, there's just a lot floating around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go to another one.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. Hey, Veronica and Leigh, is this from Twist Your Plot on Insta? All right. Do you envision a movie playing out in your head as you're writing? And if so, how do you let go of that vision you created for yourself? Well, we kind of talked about that part, but do you envision a movie playing out in your head while you're writing?
I mean, on a good day, and I will say this, I think sometimes doing that is actually incredibly useful. I don't think it's something that necessarily happens naturally for me, particularly in the early stages of drafting. For instance, if I'm setting up a battle scene or a fight scene, there's so much choreography, and even the architecture of a place will shift in trying to figure out how I want the scene to play out and how I'm going to get everything I want into the scene. But sometimes when I'm struggling with a plot, stepping back and thinking, how would I build this if this was adaptation? Or if I only had the visual to show this, how would I do this? I think that's actually quite an effective way to break through on a difficult scene. How about you?
Yeah, so I've had two kind of disparate experiences with this. So I am someone who is pretty visual, like, in my head when I'm writing. And so I do tend to think about things a little bit cinematically, which I think has only become less of the case as I've developed as a writer. So the reason I say that is because, I write a lot of fight scenes because I love them. And I used to write them like you would in a movie, with kind of like the impossibility of it. Like, the knife throwing is the best example. When I got on the Divergent set, Zoe Kravitz, who played Christina, was like, oh, they brought in a knife throwing guy, and he said that even the best knife throwers on the planet can't hit a target reliably. It's like 5 out of 10 times or something. And I was like, oh.
Movie magic.
But so then I started boxing just like as a hobby a couple of years ago, and learned a lot about what's actually possible while boxing. And so now my fight scenes have gotten, like, if you look at the Carve the Mark fight scenes versus the Divergent fight scenes, they're like a lot more realistic. Probably still like a little fudging involved, but because that's fun. But I just, like, once I learn something like that, I can't unlearn it. Yeah.
I think for me, the thing that got more realistic, well, I actually don't think it's gotten more realistic, but something I'm very conscious of is, I think that, like, the break I'm always sort of willing to make in reality is what people can endure physically and keep going.
Yeah.
Because, and we see this in film a lot too.
Like,
people will get shot. John Wick will get shot multiple times. He'll get stabbed. He'll get bitten, and he'll keep going, you know? And I think if anybody has ever been through anything physical, it's not like that. Like, your body does not recover. Like, you know, you take a hit, your body goes into a kind of mini shock, even if it's not something that puts you on your butt. So that is the thing I think about most when I think about the fact of how hard it is for me to simply get out of bed in the morning. I'm like, oh, I did sit-ups and my abs hurt. And meanwhile, like, my characters are going 3 days without sleep and engaging in fisticuffs.
I mean, last week I was upset because I had a mildly sore throat from acid reflux. And I was like, on the couch, just laying there, being like, can you fetch me some tea, husband? Please.
Bring me my fainting couch. Yeah.
Okay. Someone in the Zoom, or the Twitch, sorry, there's Zoom, there's Twitch. In the Twitch chat asked, I just want to make sure we pay attention to them a little. Oh, do you have advice for writing fight scenes? I don't know how many, well, you have some fight scenes. Yes. Do you have advice for writing action
scenes involve magic of some variety or another? Although that's not really true in Six of Crows. There's quite a few fight scenes that are just physicality based. I guess the best lessons I learned about fight scenes were actually from Avatar, The Last Airbender. And where there's actually a lot of physicality and magic involved. And the big lesson I learned from that was, in the many seasons of that show, not a single fight is the same. Not a single one is the same. They always find a way to use the magic a little bit differently, to innovate a little bit differently. And it is kind of shocking how well they do that. And that's something
that's cool.
I don't want people to feel like they're watching the same fight again and again. I want them to feel like, and I do think it's a natural thing, in the same way that people find new ways to use technology, people find new ways to use weaponry and find new ways to use magic. It's just the natural evolution of the way if these things really occupied our world, how they would go. So, yeah.
Yeah. My other piece of advice is to write short sentences.
Okay. Yeah.
But
I would say this too. Third, I have a piece of advice.
I'm sorry, did I undercut you were like very
no,
thoughtful.
I totally agree with you. Short, direct, Hemingway-esque sentences.
Just clarity, very important.
Very important. I would also say that your fight scenes will initially just feel like choreography. Where you want to get them in revision is to a place of emotionality. Yeah. Because there is something particular each person is overcoming in a fight. In the same way that if you're writing a heist, the thing that makes the heist interesting is what each person is overcoming. In a fight, there is an arc that is happening with that person's emotional journey in the fight and what they have to overcome in it.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to point out, but it can change over time, especially because, when I first write a draft, actually my kissing scenes are like this. I just do the choreography. I'm like, all right, his head is here, and this one's head is here, and like that. And then I have to go back and add like feelings, mood, setting.
Mood. Those are the hard, like kissing scenes, fighting scenes are definitely the toughest. If I could just have people sitting around a table bantering for 500 pages, easy, delightful. It would just be one long episode of Community. Like that's all it would be.
Literally around one table, just
one table.
Mm-hmm.
Slowly panning.
Someone just asked, I kind of like this question. What is more compelling, the hero or the villain?
I mean, if you write them correctly, they're both compelling.
I mean, that's the hope. But I guess, which one is more compelling to you?
I think I like an anti-hero, and I like a hero too. Like, I think it's easy to be like, I like an anti-hero because gray morality, etc. Like, okay, yes, obviously. But I also love heroes. Like, I love Batman, but I also love Superman. And I think
I love Superman. Not gonna lie.
I know you don't. No one loves Superman, but Superman is a good character. Here's the thing, like, it is harder to write somebody who is well-meaning and heroic, But the truth is very few people, I think, go through life being wholly one thing or another. I think we've all had moments in our life where we feel like we came through, and we all have moments in our life where we know we didn't. And I think if, it's hard for me to imagine somebody who simply lives heroically and never looks back on those moments or never fails to live up to what they might be. So, and I guess I'm thinking of this in terms of like, Alex Stern from Ninth House is very much an anti-hero. Like, emphasis on the anti, who steps into a more heroic role as the book goes along because, really because of her anger. Nikolai Lantsov is somebody who lives very nobly, but also has a tremendous ego and who is constantly having to ask himself why he's making the choices he's making, if they're actually driven by some desire to do right by his country, or if they're driven by something else inside of him that longs for adoration and power. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yeah. I like it. Although I think it's interesting that you would say it is like easier for you to write an anti-hero, because for me, that's something I've been working my way into over time. For me, the hero is the easiest and most straightforward path. And I think it has nothing to do with like a personality, really. Although I am like a Hufflepuff, so I wonder if that's one of the reasons that I'm like, everyone just wants to do good, right? Not true, but I think
very sweet.
I know, but I think for me, it's actually more of a structural problem. So if the hero's fighting as hard as they can to do the right thing, and then external forces are getting in the way, then that's sort of straightforward, but an anti-hero doesn't always want to do the right thing, doesn't always know what the right thing is. It's not always other people getting in their way. Sometimes they're getting in their way. And so it becomes a little more complicated from that perspective for me, where I like need them to bring about their own fate in some way, and I can't figure out how they can succeed while also being kind of an asshole. So it's just like, how do we?
I think the thrill for me is I don't feel this great conflict, and maybe that's because I'm a Slytherin.
Maybe.
But I think for me, there's a thrill in writing an anti-hero and a villain too. I mean, I think the reason we love villains is because they're transgressive and because they do the things that we are afraid to do. Power is thrilling for us. Power and decisiveness are very intoxicating. And the idea, for me at least, the idea of being that decisive, of not being ruled by emotion, which villains frequently are ruled by some larger agenda than matters of the heart, or frequently not driven by morality or by a misguided morality. I think that kind of decisiveness is thrilling, and I think for anti-heroes, what's thrilling for me is like that they're willing to go farther, that they're willing to do things that the hero will not do because they have something they need to get done. Kaz does it, Alex does it, Nina does it, like there's for me that I feel it when I'm writing, like I'll be writing and I'll be like, woo, like I think that there's a real thrill in that for me. And I think that's maybe because, I don't know, I maybe should not be allowed in polite society. I think that's what it all comes down to.
No, I totally understand that, because as like with Cardinal Mark and with Syra, she was much more willing to do terrible things in the first book because she didn't feel like she had power. And then with Chosen Ones, Sloane just like doesn't, she's confused about what she even believes about the world or about morality, and so she's kind of like, I'll do what needs to be done. And there's something exciting about that, because you're wondering, what will she do? Like, I don't always know how far she'll go, and
I don't always either. For me, there's always a moment in the scene where I'm like, oh, that's what they'll do, and I can think of, there's a scene in Ninth House where Alex is confronting this girl who's sort of who believes that they're still operating in the polite world, who believes that they're still, like, I'm going to get away with this because of polite society, because you have to be, because we have manners and there's a way we do things, and you just can't do that. But Alex can just do that. And then she does. And when I was writing it, it was like, oh, damn, she did, which is for me very exciting.
I'm suddenly realizing that my mindset about this has been kind of upside down, because I was like, well, it's straightforward if the hero wants the good thing and then the bad thing, whatever. But actually the anti-hero offers a flexibility and sort of like creative solutions in the plot. So a lot more avenues open up when you have someone who's morally flexible. So I love that I've just had this revelation during this.
Well, no, and I'll say this too, and this is something that I talk about sometimes when I talk about like the hero's journey, is the hero always chooses the third way. You know, the hero is presented with a problem, and one side says, this is the way you do it, and the other side says, this is the way you do it, and the hero says, no, I have a different way that I'm going to do it. The anti-hero says, I have 4 different ways I'm going to do it.
Would you like this the messy way, the clean way?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Okay, so I think we're gonna kind of wrap up, but someone suspiciously named Joe, who we might both know, this is our Leigh and I share an agent, so this is our agent asking us, what are both of you working on next?
Subtle. I'm currently working on the sequel to King of Scars. And I'll be working on that for the next couple of months. I'm revising it now. And I just finished line edits on a secret project that I've been referring to as the Blood and Miracles project, which is a little Grishaverse goodie that I'm looking forward to sharing with people.
Awesome.
How about you?
Well, I'm just going to do this Savannah White thing again, which is, this book is out. It is about what happens after you save the world. Oh, yay.
Yay!
So I'm just like, right now I'm kind of focused on that, but it does have a sequel. So just one, you know, not a long series or anything.
All about the duology.
Yeah, I love a duology. The structure is nice. I'm enjoying it.
I mean, I guess that's the subject for another time, but I love, like, I think it's nice, but it also, like, I had to learn that, like, you're in a different place at the start of the second book than you are, different thing.
Yeah. Different way of thinking about it for sure, but that is what I will be working on next, in addition to writing short stories. Oh, I have to also mention that I have a short story in Lightspeed magazine coming out tomorrow.
Nice.
2 days.
Congratulations.
It is a futuristic fable. So that's what I've got.
I look forward to it.
But thank you everyone for joining us, and I'm looking to the chat as if they can see me.
Sorry for the technical issues and the volume. I haven't done this. I bought a tripod and a ring light, but it seems to have caused more trouble than done much good.
You look great, and I think we got there in the end. But okay, thanks guys so much. And I think this will live on Twitch for a little while. I will work that out. Forever. Yeah. Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Happy lockdown.